5 seasons, 111 episodes. One television classic that made its stars household names. Hart to Hart looked effortless on screen, but behind the glamour, the cast faced heartbreaking losses, career-changing scandals, and personal battles few viewers ever imagined. Some rebuilt their lives. Others never truly escaped the shadows that followed them. So what really happened after the cameras stopped rolling, and which cast member's story became the most tragic of all? 5 seasons, 111 episodes. Those numbers helped turn Hart to Hart into one of television's most beloved detective dramas. Week after week, millions of viewers watched Jonathan and Jennifer Hart solve impossible mysteries while traveling the world in luxury. Everything about the show looked glamorous. The beautiful homes, the expensive cars, the perfect marriage. Even their loyal chauffeur, Max, became part of television history. But what audiences saw on screen was only part of the story. Behind the cameras, the cast carried burdens that few people ever knew about. Personal heartbreak, career uncertainty, and life-changing events unfolded while the series continued entertaining millions. The chemistry looked effortless because the actors made it look that way. In reality, each of them faced challenges that would leave lasting marks long after filming ended. The journey began in 1979 when legendary television producer Sidney Sheldon created Hart to Hart for the ABC television network. Sheldon was already famous for creating successful series like I Dream of Jeannie, but this project was different. Instead of focusing only on crime, he mixed romance, humor, and adventure into one stylish package. At the center of it all were Robert Wagner and Stephanie Powers. Wagner played Jonathan Hart, a wealthy businessman with a taste for danger. Powers portrayed Jennifer Hart, an equally fearless journalist who never hesitated to join her husband in solving another mystery. Their relationship became the heart of the series. Unlike many television couples of the era, Jonathan and Jennifer respected each other as equals, making their partnership feel genuine and refreshing. Completing the trio was Lionel Stander as Max, the loyal chauffeur, cook, and trusted friend whose humor balanced the show's suspense. Viewers instantly connected with the cast. The series quickly became one of ABC's signature programs, running for 5 seasons between 1979 and 1984. According to television records, the show produced 111 episodes, later followed by several reunion television movies because audience demand never truly disappeared. Success brought fame almost overnight. Robert Wagner, already an established Hollywood actor, reached a new generation of viewers. Stephanie Powers became one of television's most recognizable leading ladies, admired for her elegance and intelligence. Lionel Stander, after decades in Hollywood, finally found the career-defining role many believed he had always deserved. Everything appeared perfect. But success often hides pressure. Long filming days, constant travel, and the expectations of network television created enormous demands on the cast. While viewers admired the glamorous lifestyle shown each week, the actors were balancing professional commitments with deeply personal struggles that rarely made headlines. Before we continue, here's something I'd love to know. Do you think actors can truly separate their personal lives from the characters they play, or do those emotions always find their way onto the screen? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As the show's popularity continued growing, life outside the studio became far more complicated than any mystery Jonathan and Jennifer Hart ever solved. Some of the hardest battles weren't written into the script. They were painfully real. And what happened away from the cameras changed everything. While Hart to Hart continued drawing strong ratings, tragedy struck the cast in ways no television script could have prepared them for. The first heartbreaking blow came in 1981. Stephanie Powers had been in a long-term relationship with legendary actor William Holden for nearly a decade. They never married, but those close to them described their relationship as deeply committed. Then, on November 12, 1981, Holden died after suffering a fall in his California home. He was just 63 years old. The loss devastated Powers. Even while grieving, she continued working on Hart to Hart. Few viewers realized that the woman smiling on television each week was quietly carrying enormous pain behind the scenes. Years later, Powers admitted that losing Holden changed her life forever. Instead of letting grief consume her, she eventually honored his memory by helping protect wildlife in Africa. She later founded the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, continuing a cause they had both cared deeply about. But before she had time to heal, another unimaginable tragedy struck. Only a few weeks after Holden's death, on November 29, 1981, actress Natalie Wood died during a boating trip near California's Catalina Island. She was only 43 years old. Her husband was Robert Wagner. The news shocked Hollywood. For Wagner, it wasn't just the loss of a wife. It became the beginning of a story that would follow him for decades. Natalie Wood's death was initially ruled an accidental drowning. But as the years passed, questions continued to surround the circumstances of that night. The investigation was later reopened, and in 2018, authorities publicly identified Wagner as a person of interest. Importantly, he has never been charged with a crime and has consistently denied any wrongdoing. The renewed attention brought intense media scrutiny. Suddenly, old headlines returned. Television specials revisited the case. Newspapers examined events from decades earlier. Although Hart to Hart had ended years before, Wagner's name once again became part of a national conversation. Through it all, he maintained his innocence and rarely spoke publicly beyond official statements and his memoirs. What many people forget is that these tragedies happened while Hart to Hart was still being produced. Despite their personal heartbreak, Wagner and Powers continued filming, delivering performances that gave audiences no hint of the pain they were carrying. That professionalism earned them enormous respect from colleagues throughout the industry. But here's something many viewers never knew. The heartbreaking events also strengthened the friendship between Wagner and Powers. Having experienced devastating losses within weeks of each other, they became an important source of support for one another. Their on-screen chemistry wasn't just acting anymore. It was built on genuine trust and shared grief. Halfway through this story, it's worth saying something. If stories like this make you see classic Hollywood in a completely different way, consider subscribing. We don't just revisit famous shows, we uncover the real lives behind them, and the biggest revelations are still ahead. As the series eventually came to an end in 1984, the cast moved in different directions. To fans, it looked like another successful television show reaching its natural conclusion. But for Robert Wagner, the hardest chapter of his public life was far from over. The headlines didn't end when the series did, they were only getting started. When Hart to Hart ended in 1984, the cast stepped away from the roles that had made them television icons. But while the cameras stopped rolling, life kept moving, and for Robert Wagner, the spotlight never truly faded. 4 years, Wagner continued acting in television and film. He appeared in popular projects, including the Austin Powers movies, introducing himself to a younger generation of fans. On the surface, his career remained steady. But one story refused to disappear. The death of Natalie Wood remained one of Hollywood's biggest unanswered mysteries. Although the case had originally been ruled an accidental drowning, investigators reopened it in 2011 after new information was presented. A year later, the official cause of death was amended to reflect that the circumstances were not fully understood. Then, in 2018, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department publicly identified Wagner as a person of interest in the investigation. It's important to note that being a person of interest is not the same as being charged with a crime. Wagner has consistently denied any involvement in Wood's death, and no criminal charges have ever been filed against him. Even so, the renewed investigation changed public perception. Every interview, every public appearance, every anniversary of Natalie Wood's death brought the same questions back into the headlines. For Wagner, it meant carrying a story he insisted was misunderstood while continuing to live under public scrutiny. Meanwhile, Stefanie Powers chose a very different path. Rather than focusing only on acting, she devoted much of her life to wildlife conservation. In memory of William Holden, she expanded the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, helping protect endangered animals and supporting education programs in Kenya. It became one of the most meaningful chapters of her life. She also remained active in television, theater, and public speaking, but many admirers came to know her just as much for her humanitarian work as for her acting career. In interviews, Powers often spoke with warmth about Hart to Hart and her friendship with Wagner. Despite everything life had thrown at both of them, they remained close friends for decades, even reuniting for special events celebrating the show's legacy. That friendship surprised many fans. It showed that while tragedy had shaped their lives, it hadn't destroyed the bond they built during those 5 unforgettable seasons. Before we continue, think about this for a moment. Most of us have experienced a time when life forced us to keep moving even while carrying heartbreak. Maybe it wasn't in front of millions of people, but the feeling is the same. Have you ever had to smile through one of the hardest moments of your life? For both actors, resilience became their greatest achievement. Not awards, not ratings, not fame, simply finding a way to keep going. But while Wagner and Powers continued writing new chapters of their lives, another beloved member of the Hart family was quietly approaching the end of his journey. And his farewell would leave fans with one final reminder that television legends don't stay with us forever. That beloved cast member was Lionel Stander, the actor who brought Max to life with warmth, wit, and unforgettable loyalty. Before Hart, Stander had spent decades in Hollywood. His career began in the 1930s, but during the 1950s he was caught up in Hollywood's blacklist, making it difficult to find steady work in the United States. 4 years, he accepted roles in Europe and independent productions, refusing to give up on acting despite the setbacks. Then, in 1979, everything changed. At the age of 71, he landed the role that would define his career. As Max, Stander became far more than a chauffeur. He was Jonathan and Jennifer Hart's trusted friend, protector, and often the funniest person in every episode. His quick one-liners and fatherly personality made him a fan favorite. It's remarkable that the biggest success of his career came so late in life. For many actors, Hollywood closes its doors as they grow older. For Lionel Stander, it finally opened them. After Hart ended in 1984, he continued acting but worked far less than before. Age and declining health gradually slowed him down. Even so, he reunited with Robert Wagner and Stephanie Powers for several Hart television movies, giving longtime fans one more chance to see the trio together. Sadly, on November 30, 1994, Lionel Stander passed away at the age of 86 from lung cancer. His death marked the end of an era. Without Max, Hart could never quite be the same. Even years later, Robert Wagner and Stephanie Powers often spoke fondly of their friend, describing him as generous, funny, and deeply professional. They made it clear that the chemistry audiences loved wasn't created by clever writing alone, it came from genuine friendship behind the scenes. Today, more than 4 decades after the series first aired, Hart continues to find new audiences through reruns and streaming platforms. Younger viewers discover the same charm that captivated millions in the early 1980s, proving that great storytelling doesn't fade with time. Looking back, it's clear that every member of the cast faced challenges far greater than the fictional mysteries they solved on television. Stephanie Powers transformed heartbreaking loss into a lifetime of conservation work. Robert Wagner continued living under the weight of public scrutiny while maintaining his innocence and preserving his acting career. Lionel Stander finally found the recognition he had waited decades to receive, even if he didn't have many years to enjoy it. Their stories remind us that fame doesn't protect anyone from grief, loss, or life's unexpected turns. Sometimes the happiest faces on television are carrying the heaviest burdens once the cameras stop rolling. And perhaps that's the true legacy of Hart. It wasn't just a show about solving mysteries. It quietly became a reminder that the greatest mysteries often exist in real life, the private struggles that audiences never see. Before you go, here's one more story you won't want to miss. If you thought the cast of Hart went through unimaginable hardships, wait until you hear what happened to another beloved television family whose biggest heartbreak began after their hit series ended. That story is already on the channel, and it may change the way you remember classic TV forever. For millions of fans, Hart will always be remembered for romance, adventure, and unforgettable chemistry. But behind every smile was a real person facing challenges no script could ever fully capture. And perhaps that's why the cast's legacy continues to resonate today, not because they played perfect characters, but because they endured very human struggles long after the final scene faded to black. But another beloved member of the cast never had the chance to write a second chapter.